Welcome to Newsnight here on Channels Television. On this program, we speak to major league players in Nigeria's democracy and the issues generated from its drive for growth and development. I am Ladi Akiridoluale. We continue our focus on national issues of economic development, unemployment, as well as the role of technology and creativity in the creation of value addition to increase societal wealth. We also talk agriculture as well as the role of religious leaders in national development. My guest is the founder and president of the KICC Global, Pastor Matthew Ashimolowo. Pastor, thank you so much for your time. It's a pleasure to have you on the program.
Thank you very much.
Many Nigerians are worried.
All right.
The country seems to be at a crossroads. I mean, if we start off with the issue of security,
Yes.
it's always been with us, but it seems to have assumed a new dimension
Yes.
across the country, different things in different places.
Yes.
We were battling Boko Haram in the northeast, then now we're battling banditry in the northwest, kidnapping, armed robbery, as well as so many other things. Then, of course, there's the herdsmen, farmers clashes. Are you worried?
Yes, very worried. Worried because the first, among other things, you want a government to assure you is your security. Once there is internal security, external aggression becomes almost impossible. Because if there is internal disheaval, then it means that people will not be able to flow together. And if there's an external aggression, those ones can take advantage. I think the greatest challenge for me is the fact that it seems as if nothing and no one is doing anything about it. With all due respect to the government, I think it is too little and too late. I traversed between two nations. I've now been living for 35 years in the United Kingdom. You can walk the streets of London 2, 3, 4 a.m. without any harassment of necessity. I mean, there will be some degree, but almost none. Here is also a place where the emphasis on Christianity or religion is very minimum, and yet people are civil enough to respect your space. One of the reasons why I'm also very worried about the internal security of Nigeria is the size of the nation. We must not have a massive refugee problem, because any which way we spill, we will overwhelm the nation. We are surrounded on sides by about 4 nations. To the west, Benin, to the east, Cameroon and Chad, and to the north, Niger Republic, and then to the south, of course, the Atlantic. Each of these nations are not up to a state in Nigeria. So if you have a massive refugee problem, you will have issues. Already, the natural aggressiveness of the Nigerian person makes some of those nations to say, the Nigerians have come again. How much more when you have an issue? So I think it is a major problem, and I think if there is anything else, it should be a priority on the list of government's program for now.
Now, there's the issue of, you alluded to it in your opening statement where you talked about in the UK, not too, the religious emphasis is not too much. But here, there's a lot of religious emphasis. We have an army of churches, an army of mosques and other religions right across. And yet, there's this high level of insecurity, a lot of criminality and so on. And some have pointed out that there's a certain paradox to the whole thing, that, you know, huge religiosity and yet huge criminality side by side. Do you see that paradox as someone who talks to a lot of people in Nigeria?
My take will be the fact that you can only practice Christianity or Islam or any other religion within the context of the society in which you find yourself. It is not the responsibility of the religious bodies to assure security in the nation. And this again goes back to tie to unemployment, leadership, and the systems. I think the two biggest problems of Nigeria, in my own opinion, is the quality of leadership and the challenge of a broken down system. When your system breaks down, then you have corruption on all levels. Nigeria's corruption is not just financial. And with all due respect, I think we think the EFCC is the only answer. EFCC can only deal with financial corruption. There is systemic corruption. You are driving and Marwa is driving in your face and he thinks you should move for him. That's a corruption because the system is corrupt. The transportation system is corrupt. So when we have quality leadership and strong systems, then you find that the things we expect the religious bodies to do, which is supposed to be the government's responsibility, will then flow properly. In Africa, the challenge is the person is bigger than the system. We need to develop robust system, powerful system, great governmental systems. So whoever comes or goes does not matter. That is a major issue we have not yet dealt with. Our nation is up and down based on who comes in and who goes out. I've lived in the UK for 35 years. When there's an election, you didn't even know. You only knew because you just heard somebody saying that there's election. Now, even the person who is campaigning hardly makes noise. He just drops a flyer through your doorpost. You get your voter's card through your doorpost. You can even vote online. And if you're overseas, if you gave good notice, you could vote. Okay, somebody will say, hey, stop it. This is Nigeria. Let's come back home. We were just as much as in the same place as people like India when they got their independence, like Singapore when they got their independence, but they moved forward. So, in my opinion, Ladi, I think if we build a robust system, if anybody stands up to be a leader, the system will show if he can lead us or not. After we build strong systems, then we build strong leaders. The challenge of Africa is that the people we often call our leaders are tribal chiefs.
But where did we get it wrong? Because there are some who would argue, listening to you now, there are some who would argue that at the beginning we kind of got it right to the extent that those who took power in the immediate aftermath of independence, like in many of the countries you mentioned, India, Singapore, and so on, were knowledgeable, they were exposed, they had traveled, they had fought for the independence. So they had an idea of where they wanted to take the people, where they wanted to take the country. And then it went down south.
Yes.
How did we get it wrong in that realm, the question of our leadership? How did we get that wrong?
Some might want to blame the colonial masters and say they placed one tribe on top of the other. But then even if they did that, you have now taken over the helm of leadership for over 50 years, since 1960, which is 59 years. It therefore means that you should have been able to evolve with something peculiar to your situation. I personally think that one of the biggest challenges of Nigeria is the overemphasis on regional politics, because you find that whenever a leader gets there, he wants to promote the people from his area and he wants to promote his own geographical location to the detriment of the other people. So where is the federation if all of the resources at a particular time is located in one area? So I think personally that even in the period you mentioned, because I may be a bit young, but I'm 67 years old. I know that even at that time, the problem existed. It's only that it was in germ form. It has only just ballooned now. I, for an example, ended in the south, even though I was born in Zaria. My parents were Yoruba. I only ended in the south because Awolowo had to say, hey, all you Yoruba soldiers, get on the train, come back home, because of the way the Igbo man was being killed. So the problem existed then. Let nobody think that it's a new thing. And what I just described to you is December 1966. I came down south with the soldiers in this one long train out of Kano barracks, Kaduna barracks, and we ended at the Banomokola barracks, because this problem existed then. So our leaders need to sit down and look at a system that will bring a commonwealth, a common understanding, a respect for each geographical location, and know that this is not animal farm. One animal is not more important than the other, and every location matters. We probably also need to begin to think of what are you bringing to the table. There must be equal distribution based on what you brought to the table. I don't know if I answered your question.
You did, you did. Which then leads me to something else,
Okay.
which is that many recognize what you've just raised, which is that this problem has been there. It's just become bigger.
Balloon, yes.
That's it. And you ask yourself today, so many people talking about restructuring, true federalism, the fact that the military's incursion in 1966, which led to the crisis you described earlier, tended to remove the arrangement that made it possible for the country to stand at that time.
Yes.
And that since then, we need to return to that situation.
Yes.
Would you subscribe to that view?
I will very much do so, because if you look at the nation, with all due respect, I think one of the biggest problems of Nigeria is the middle class and the upper middle class Nigerian tends to want to keep quiet even when some things are obvious. Nigeria is so totally imbalanced. Imbalanced in power, imbalanced in economic derivations, imbalanced in where the resources go to. We're doing this interview in Lagos. Can I shock you by saying, as it is, 60% of business is done in Lagos. 60% of all the business in Nigeria. 55% of VAT paid in Nigeria is paid in Lagos alone. Can I shock you to say there is not one jet plane, a jet bomber, to protect Lagos if there is any external aggression? Whereas there are 4 airfields in the north with fighter planes. Okay, we know there's problem of Boko Haram, but why would you leave the whole of the south unprotected? And I'm saying it, I stand to be challenged. The only thing that can shoot a small rocket is a helicopter somewhere in Port Harcourt. So if somebody came and wants to damage Lagos, he will have done it and gone before we woke up. This and some other attenuating facts makes it obvious that there is an imbalance and there is a need for a restructuring so that everyone feels comfortable. Although, having allowed the wound to fester this much, restructuring is not going to be very easy.
Indeed. Which then brings me to where we are today. Pastor, you've traveled widely, you minister to a wide congregation, a varied congregation. What do people tell you that they think is the one thing that needs to be addressed for us to achieve the kind of situation you've just described?
Number one, I think we need to have a Marshall Plan, which looks at Nigeria and sees the broken down situation. When Europe came out of the Second World War, practically almost every city was ruined by the various bombs they were throwing at each other. So America had to define a Marshall Plan, which decided to reconstruct and rebuild the whole of Europe. I'm 67. I cannot forget the fact that after the Biafran War, in which I lost my dad was a soldier who fought in the Biafran War, General Yakubu Gowon's administration announced a national reconstruction. And many of the projects subsequent governments claimed came out of the vision of that administration. I think we need leaders who would take a 30-year, 40-year view, irrespective of political angles from which they come, now give us a national vision. You might call it a global vision, whatever you want to call it, but something that takes care of years to come and begins to put these visions in place, and we have an agreement with all our leaders that whoever wins and whichever party wins, among other things you want to execute, this is the vision of Nigeria. This is where we want to be when we have quality leadership and we have great systems, and number three, a vision which we all, not a few, all buy into. Then we may be on our way to the Nigeria we desire.
Now, as you say that, something occurs to me. In many of the countries that have grown and developed,
Yes.
The Asian tigers, Europe,
Singapore,
excluded, of course, and so on, there's something that people point and they say, when they talk about the kind of plan you just mentioned, 20, 30 years, long term, it requires stable leadership. And sometimes that stable leadership is almost synonymous with authoritarianism. But we are now practicing democracy.
Okay.
Which means that most of the political actors are fighting for just the next election, 3-4 years' time. And therefore, they are either incapable or unable to actually follow through with a very long-term vision, because they've got the eye on the next election. I don't know if this presents a problem for us, even if we all agree that this is what we should do.
Well, if democracy is not the right word to describe the kind of system of government we need, then we may have to look for the one that fits our culture, our immediate situation, but certainly not authoritarianism. I would rather also borrow from somewhere else, and I think it can work here. I wouldn't think that the United Arab Emirates have authoritarianism. Rather, it has a system where, yes, you have a visionary, Maktoum the Senior, father of the current emir, had a vision of a Dubai where people can come and enjoy themselves, play, build, and live. It turned sand dunes to an empire of the future. His son buys into it. Everyone else have bought into it. Okay, we do not have a consistency based on some family, but we can also have a consistency based on a common vision. A common vision. Democracy is what's practiced in the United Kingdom, but there is a common vision. I think one of the biggest challenges may be, okay, differences in language, differences in culture, and we have allowed this federal character thing to really, really tear us apart. I think the states should have been a blessing. They've become a curse in a way, because if you go among the Yoruba man, the Oyo state man has an issue with the Osun state man, the Abia state man has a problem with the Ebonyi state man. We need to evolve a system of government, but before the system of government, we need to evolve with a common vision. Where do we want Nigeria to be in 30 years' time? When they had that, I don't know, the National
Conference, yes.
I think what should have come out of that conference, among other things, should have been one major robust vision that says Nigeria wants to be part of the nations that are making a difference by so and so time. And then we walk back from there to now. If that must happen, these are the milestones. And we also ask that our politicians come to an agreement that they key into these milestones. If you become president, we are not saying you wouldn't have your unique dream, but please key into these milestones. For example, Nigeria depends on crude oil, but in the next 20 years, 90% of the Western world will have moved away from crude oil. So we will have no market for our crude oil. Therefore, we want the kind of leaders who will say, hey, while we are busy selling crude oil, these guys are building cars that wouldn't use our crude oil. What do we do? Let's forget about our various parties. Let's come up with a common dream, a common vision. So leadership, vision, strong systems. That's my opinion.
Now, if we take it that that's correct, one of the things you had been very passionate about is that, and I'm happy you mentioned the issue of petroleum products and selling of oil, is the issue of technology.
Yes.
And the fact that we're getting left behind.
We are actually left behind.
Now, because I know you use the example of Amazon.
Yes.
Very, very often.
Yes, yes.
And I've spoken to quite a number of people who point to that as very clear evidence that we don't seem to be aware that we're being left behind.
Okay.
Now, if we're to take that as the base, how do we leverage on that? Especially using the youth, the younger population, who are in any case in the majority, to drive this process?
First of all, I think we need to revisit our educational system. It is very structured. It is always the same. Our church also has a university, but we need to begin to look at our educational system. We need to plug into the fourth industrial revolution. The first one was agricultural. The second one was heavy industry. The third one was technology. This fourth one is artificial intelligence. It is robotic engineering. It is smart technology, with my phone controlling the lights in my house from where I am seated, watching my cameras from where I'm seated, and being able to have cars that don't necessarily use petroleum. And guess what? The Nigerian youth is capable. A young boy in New York, Nigerian of Igbo descent, prepared an app which makes you to be able to use the New York train system easily, because he was always getting lost. So he created the app. Napster bought it from him for $1 billion. Your telephone number, your telephone, whenever you are able to hear a ringtone, it was a Nigerian boy who created the first ringtone, Alexander Amosu. And that idea was bought from him by the telephone company. So the Nigerian person is able. I think our government do not know the issues on ground. Generations 30 and below are more than 70 million. And there are no job prospects. And these minds are sharp. I think we should maybe bypass the universities, create maybe some technology hubs in all of the states, and let's just hope it does not get corrupted. Technology hubs where people can go and be trained in various areas, so that we quickly catch up in internet security, catch up in robotics, catch up in artificial intelligence, catch up in creating hybrid cars. And we may think, can our people design cars? Of course, you've heard of the guy from Gombe State who designed the Veyron car. Now became the biggest car sold by General Motors, and is a Nigerian. So it means our young people can. But when you look, sometimes when you see the budget read, or the ministers chosen, or the commissioners chosen, you are wondering, I hope somebody knows that in the words of Asha, there is fire on the mountain. When you have 70 million unemployed, God help you that there be no problem. When I was coming for this interview, as we came out of the estate in which I live, there were 300 young people under the age of 25 waiting to come and do labor job inside the estate. In the houses that have been built, I got scared. I said to my driver and my police, all these middle class people who live in this area, who think they are comfortable, they don't know that there must not be revolution in Nigeria.
You've alluded to corruption several times already during this.
Yes.
And there are those who argue that if we don't kill it, it will kill us. It's something else that had always been with us. Some say it's actually cultural.
Yes.
The system of dash.
Yes.
In Nigeria, but that it had become systemic.
Yes.
And has grown.
Yes.
Now, this current administration, now in its second term, has made this war against
its
corruption.
mantra.
The president continuously harps on this. But there are those who argue that, apart from the political issues about being selective and so on, that the battle is not being fought. That there's corruption everywhere,
yes.
but that the battle is not being fought in a way that it can be won.
Yes.
Do you agree?
I will say yes. the president has good intentions. The president has a good passion. But in my opinion, the president is just like any good leader should be, must have a helicopter view of what he wants. But the microcosms should be dealt with by the subordinates under him. If the president says, I want a government that kills corruption, then the people around him should now come up with the systems that make corruption difficult. For example, the banking system, the financial systems. If we say, I mean, the National Assembly passed that you cannot carry more than $500,000 at a given time, but let's just face it, Laji. Have they not seen anyone with large sums of money, much more than that? We need those who will take the vision of the president and turn it to systems, so that even if you wanted to do it, you were not allowed. I live in the UK. There is no LASMA to catch you if you pass red lights. The system works. The camera will take your photograph, including when you were smiling as you were passing the thing. You know, and in fact, yes, Pastor Matthew, I will admit that one day on a 50-mile-per-hour place on Christmas Day, I had to drive 53 miles per hour in a 50-mile. And the camera took my nice photograph and sent me a bill and said, nice one, man. Next time you do it, we'll put a point on your license. I could not argue. It was, the system. And guess what? These cameras are not that expensive anymore. Now, robotic engineering and IP protocol cameras have made it possible that you can have these cameras across the whole of Lagos and feeding a system which automatically just triggers. It's not a human being, so there is no egunje. You see, wherever there is disorder, you cannot kill corruption. For you to kill corruption, you must create order. And people who like corruption hate your order. That is the thing. You will find that if you tell a man, use systems in this place, he will say, it's not going to work, because he knows that it will preclude him. So what are we saying? Corruption can be stopped. Maybe not 100%, because let's face it, even in the Western world, they may have used another word, lobbying. What is lobbying? Why do you take people to breakfast before they get an appointment, for you to get an interview? So they have their system. We cannot run away from some degree of it, but there are so many of it that you can plug. And then the banks, the central banks, you have systems whereby even if the bank did not want to inform you, once I went and deposited a certain amount, it triggered in your system in the central banking system. Companies should be also such that there should be small companies. You are a trader by the roadside. You didn't just set up a trade. There's a system whereby we knew where we were. Our national identification system should work. So that, for example, if a person committed a crime in Lagos and he moves to Gombe, you can never see him. Only a mistake will make you see him. We have no system to capture this person. So when we talk corruption, the passion of the president is so right. But there is a need for a system that makes the helicopter view of the president captured at a microcosm level.
Now, I bring you back to security, but only to the extent that we want to take a look at how this affects religion. Why do I say this? There are those who argue that in history, no country survives 2 religious wars. We haven't fought a religious war, but we have fought a war.
Yes.
But many issues now are divided. You are in a very unique position because you had been a Muslim and now you're a Christian.
All right.
And I want to tap that unique feature that you have.
Okay.
To look at the role that religious leaders play in fanning the embers of discord. on issues that, as you pointed out, there should be a global vision, an
Yes.
agreement. People should buy in. But because religion is so powerful, people tend to believe it's faith driven. And because it is faith driven, you can't appeal to logic or reason.
Yeah,
Aha.
it's belief.
It's belief. Now, if that is the case, that makes religious leaders very powerful
Okay.
because they can sway huge swathes of people. What has been your experience dealing with religious leaders generally, fellow religious leaders generally, but with specific reference to Nigerian religious leaders and this issue of discord, disunity, even within the religions?
Okay.
Not to talk about one
The
religion
various
against
ones, yeah.
the religions. What's been your experience? What do you see? Are they playing the role they ought to? Or let me put it another way: are you playing the role that you ought to? Not you personally, but your colleagues and yourself.
Let me start by saying that truly religion can be used and misused to achieve personal dreams. And for the persons who are watching who think, Christianity have always been on the side of, they slap you on one side of your cheek, turn the other side. Christianity too have been aggressive in the past. For those who are not students of church history, I like to just let them know that the reason the whole of Latin America is Catholic is because of the Catholic conquistado and the Spanish conquistado. When the Spanish went to Latin America, they went with the Catholic Church. And if you didn't accept the Virgin Mary, you were killed. You were to die in the name of the Virgin Mary. Those were excesses we carried out that time. And I must say that the Roman Catholic Church have since repented and apologized to people for those past errors. When we come to our own West African context and Nigerian context, you will find that sometimes those who receive things on the basis of belief, it depends on who is teaching you. A teacher can communicate truth and communicate error. I repeat, teachers have capacity to communicate truth or error. Oftentimes when you have crisis, it is because somebody is fanning the embers. It is useful for them to achieve a certain gain. In my opinion, for example, Boko Haram is like a hydra. It is religious, it is tribal, it is geographical, it is economic. So it is a multifaceted animal. Same thing. You could use religion that way if your mind is corrupted. Whereas you would then find that the same people who had these religions, when they meet one another, they are very civil with each other. But for all the misled and the ones who want to misuse, our minds are just to honor God and to be the best that we could be. I think religious crisis oftentimes is fueled by people who use it for political reasons, those who use it for tribal reasons, those who use it for economic gain, and those who are also blind and who think this is the way to carry out my religion. I think going forward, people should be honored and respected for what they stand. I want to allude to the statement of His Excellency the President when he came against what the Northern elders said when they told every Fulani man to move out of the South. And he said, no, a Nigerian should have a right to move because we have a right of movement. In the same way, people should have a right to practice. However, Ladi, I like to go on record and challenge many people by saying there are certain parts of northern Nigeria where you can't build a church, and I don't think it is fair. There is no part in the south where you want to buy land and you can't buy. So there should be balance. And no one faith should be more honored than the other. No one faith should be given more opportunity than the other. And let me be a little more controversial. just a little. Our governments should stop sponsoring pilgrimages.
But those are supposed to enhance.
No. Government should govern. You want to go on pilgrimage? Find your money and go on pilgrimage, whether Christian or Muslim. It is draining our resources. The government should stop. Because if you notice, a good number of times, southern governments tend to send Christians. It's wrong. If I am a Muslim in the southern government, why didn't you send me? Northern governments tend to send Muslims. It should stop. I said I was going to be controversial. I'm ready for my head to be on the guillotine for this one. We need the resources to build our nation. We need to be the Singapore of Africa, the Dubai of Africa. We need this resource. If I want to go to Jerusalem as a Christian, I should buy my ticket. I've been to Jerusalem probably 8 times, not at any government's expense. I used to go 2 times every year to go preach for a TV station. I told you it's going to be controversial.
But do you think religious leaders are under undue scrutiny? Are they held to a standard which is hypocritical because you don't expect other people to live up to that standard?
With all due respect, yes. Many are placed on a pedestal, and we fail to realize religion, Christianity, for example, can only be practiced within the context of the nation in which you find yourself. If you are in Europe, you will see that this man is Christian, but at the same time, he's European. If you are in Ghana, this guy is Christian, and at the same time, he's Ghanaian. We contextualize our faith. So sometimes we expect people to be a certain way. With all due respect also, yes, if you say you are a teacher of the people, you should be the first example. However, we must realize that Christians are not perfect. I'll use Christians, for example. They are not perfect, they are just forgiven. Preachers are not perfect, they are just forgiven. And I will even say that many times, even we who stand behind the holy box should let people know that we are humans. We are just, like the Bible describes, earthen vessels carrying a precious thing. And sometimes the vessel can break. It is not to disqualify the content of the vessel.
Agriculture used to be the mainstay of the country.
Yes.
It employed a lot of people.
Yeah.
And there's the back to the land program emphasis
yes.
now that,
yeah.
look, the white collar jobs are not there.
Yes.
You've got to go back. And if you're going to be self-sufficient in food production, you've got to do it at home. You're big in agriculture.
How did you know?
I did the research. I did the research. I know that, for example, you started off with something as simple as pineapples. It did. And then, of course, you grew it.
Yeah.
Now, I guess the question is, as a practitioner, what are the challenges? Because quite a number of people, nobody would say someone like you is doing agriculture simply to feed. But there are millions who are doing it simply to feed, and they face quite a lot of challenges, in the process.
Yes.
And they ask questions that if you know that this is what we should be doing, and you say we should be doing it, why are you not helping us do it?
Cool.
Now, what are they supposed to do? What are they supposed to do to help the millions? Even someone like you, what would you have liked to see that would have made you a big-time farmer, employing a lot of people, generating a great deal of wealth, which spreads across the economy?
The challenge of Nigeria's economic sector, agricultural sector, is governmental policy many times does not match with what's on ground. And the government may not of necessity know it, but that's the truth. And I'm glad you gave me the platform to speak. In the days of the Obasanjo administration, there was such a strong emphasis on cassava because they wanted it to be, they wanted farina from cassava mixed with wheat flour to make bread. It will cut down the amount of importation of wheat. Ladia went and planted 500 acres of cassava, and it was a disaster. One, there were only 2 flour mills who, out of compulsion, because the Obasanjo administration said, if you don't buy farina, we'll shut down your flour mill. So we had 2 of them who came to buy, and we still needed more. Somebody came, built an ethanol factory on the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway to also buy all the cassava and convert to ethanol. But as soon as that administration went out, the next administration had no time for cassava. My 500 acres, the factory I set up, producing the farina, we lost all the money. Then the next administration came and said, rice, rice, rice. Every of these systems, I always get exports. For my cassava, I went for professor of cassava. Can you believe there are professors of cassava? NUI, IITA. That's why I went to get these guys, and they helped us to find the particular ones that will work well, that will not be destroyed by rodents, cassavas that have been, that are hybrids, that have been worked on so that when rodents get near, they actually run away. It was a disaster. Rice, I went to University of Agriculture, Abeokuta, and got a professor of rice. And he gave us the right rice, the rice Nigerians like, Ofada rice. And then I became the biggest grower of Ofada rice. We had 100 acres of Ofada rice, only to find the Nigerian Seed Council does not recognize Ofada rice. Can you believe that? They don't. I had a disaster in my hand. They said they recognized another rice which they had a name for, that is the one we should have planted. So they rejected our rice. We had to begin to struggle to look for people who will buy Ofada rice. In fact, in the pain, I didn't even set up the food processing plant I had ordered in from China. So I just began to sell just the seed. The third farm which we have now created is the palm plantation. I have 2,500 palm trees standing right now. They've started generating palm seed. I just read in the papers that 200 billion naira has been allocated towards palm oil
production.
Ladi, I know somebody may not like this, but 90% of it would be some politician who doesn't have one palm tree standing who will go and apply for it. So we need the Ministry of Agric, one, to be more forthright with helping SMEs, small and medium enterprise farmers, medium enterprise farmers, large-scale farmers. Look for them, scout for them, encourage them. I just told you I have 2,500 trees standing. In fact, I planted 3,300, but 2,500 survived. It's now in its 4th year. It's already producing.
And to think that we were once some of the biggest.
Not once some of the biggest. They took the seed from here to Malaysia. And I don't know if you've ever watched documentaries on palm trees from Malaysia. There is one particular farm in Malaysia with 1 million acres. Maybe Nigerians don't realize that every soap you buy from abroad has palm oil in it. Every cream you rub has palm oil. And Malaysia has cornered the market. So with crude oil, even if it doesn't run out from our grounds, with it becoming obsolete in its market in 20 years' time, it means we need to become robust with our agriculture. IFAO, International Food and Agriculture Organization, said 60% of farmable land on earth right now is in Africa. 60%. So Africa is the future. Africa is the tomorrow of the world. We are the future.
Now, as we wind this down, I want you to take a look ahead. Many people are despondent. They are not happy. They're not hopeful. They look and all they see is darkness. What would you say to people like that? Depression, suicide in Nigeria. The rates have gone way high.
Yes.
Divorce, I mean, all the manifestations of difficulty. What would you say to such people at this point in time when it looks like even hope is a scarce commodity?
I first quote the words of John Fitzgerald Kennedy by saying, "Ask not what your nation can do for you. Ask what you can do for your nation." Stop looking out to your government. Government have not done this. Government have not done
Actually,
that.
they are looking outside the country now. A lot of people want to leave. They're leaving in
Yeah,
droves. The
but
young you're talking about are leaving.
in droves, I agree, but oftentimes they do not realize that the grass seems greener on the other side. Laddie, I travel. I travel. Every week I'm in the plane. In fact, last week I was in US, I was also in London, and I'm right now in Nigeria. In 1 week I can be in 4 cities. Last year I was in about 10 African nations. I'm not counting Europe, Canada, and so on and so forth, or United States, or Dubai. And one thing I have observed, particularly in Africa, is that no nation has opportunity like Nigeria. None. I was in Botswana, 2 million people. In fact, Botswana is a funny one. 2 million people, 3 million cows. There are more cows than human beings. And nobody's dying for the cow, by the way. And all those nations, I was in Namibia, I was in Malawi last year. You will be amazed at the basic life of those places. I think the challenge of the Nigerian person is not knowing how to look and see the opportunities around him. The boys in our music industry are doing it. I mean, everyone wants to do something with our young people. They're hearing voices they've never heard. They're seeing dances they've never seen. We are creative. We are gifted. If you're a young person and you are watching this, I've seen poor people in Europe that are poorer than Africa. There is opportunity in the agri sector in 5 areas, 5 E's, I'll call them: education, in the economy, in the environment, as in agriculture, in the electronic world, and in the engineering world. Our people need to re-engineer their mind, need to step out of the box. 3.4 trillion is the value of the economy of the whole of Africa, according to Wikipedia, whereas only 4 companies in the United States are worth 3.6 trillion. Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, and Facebook. Only 4. These 4 companies did not exist 40 years ago. And only one of them produces something tangible, Apple, the phone and the Apple iPad. Others, Amazon is
services.
Yeah, services. So it's about looking inward and looking upward and creating something that can change our nations. Young people need to realize where you are running to. You might just go there and find that there is no future. They are all writing their laws and excluding you. Since Margaret Thatcher, Britain has become very difficult to enter. America has become tough. With the advent of President Trump, it's not very easy to settle as an immigrant. Canada still needs a lot of people because it has the 2nd largest land mass on Earth, and it's only 34 million people.
They have nobody. They don't
Nobody.
have people.
I mean, the nation is twice the size of America and only 34 million people. So they want more people. But you can get there and you find that they only need people who are highly skilled. Because everybody wants to pick and choose the best. Be the best in your nation.
Pastor Ashimolowo, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your
My
time.
pleasure too. Thank you so
very
much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
That's Newsnight today. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.